Yeah, my name is Nick. I'm the PD of Hawaii Public Radio. Full disclosure, I'm terrified of public speaking. I'm on the radio. I'm terrified of public speaking. And if you've ever been to radio studios and you've ever seen the broadcast booth, it's usually a little box with a microphone in it, usually some sort of board, and the walls are padded. And it's not because we're insane, it's just because it's to dampen any kind of sound in there. I know a few people that probably should be institutionalized, but we won't go there tonight. But, and what you see is somebody sitting in there alone, doing what looks like talking to themselves in a padded room. And the thing is I do this all the time, and what you never ever want to remind yourself is that you're talking to a minimum of 2,000 people, upwards of like 40, 50,000 people at any given time. And if I really were to start thinking of that, I'd probably freeze up like I am right now. So, but I just wanted to share a few lessons learned from that dark box. This is storytelling, and it's all about generations, and radio is something that to me has transcended a lot of generations. It itself is changing, the nature of it is changing, but it's something that has connected a lot of people, and I consider myself lucky enough to be able to actually participate in that and that great experiment that we call radio and broadcasting all the time. And from that, I've learned a lot of kind of weird life lessons along the way, and I wanted to share a little bit of backstory and that. And when I say radio, I'm more talking about independent radio, college radio, public radio. I've never really been much of an advocate for commercial radio. Nothing wrong with it, and not to slide on the people that do it, but I've never been a fan of, like fart and titty jokes and, the Micronesian joke of the day and stuff like that. So it's not really my thing. I've always been with public radio, so I'm just know that when I say radio, I'm more talking about public radio. So for me growing up, I was a big fan of a station called Radio Free Hawaii. They're no longer around, unfortunately, but they did this really cool thing where they tried to democratize radio. They would put these ballot boxes all around town, and you could go and vote. You write in your top 5 songs, and then you could write 3 songs in that you didn't want to hear on the radio. And when you're 13 and 14, that is power. You're like, I hate that band. I want them off. And then they would tabulate all these votes, and a small army of interns would put it together. And if not, enough people hated a song, they would literally sledgehammer it off of air. They had a sledgehammer in the booth, apparently. I've never went there. But they would put the CD in a little vise, and you would hear this as the CD was destroyed, and they vowed to never ever play it again. And I love that. I was like, let's destroy something live on air and let everybody hear it. It must have sucked if you were that artist, but And then they would do crazy things like mix Mozart into Bob Marley, into Metallica. And it just made perfect sense to you when you were a little kid, and it still does to me to this day. And, I also learned the thrill of music discovery, that, there's not one genre, there are many genres, and eventually they're all somehow connected at some point. And music is one of these things that you can listen and listen and listen and listen and listen, and it gets better and better and better, and you find that it's just an ocean out there that in our lifetimes we're literally just gonna dip a toe into. And, so the idea is to just keep digging and keep exploring music out there, because you're always going to find something new, and it will never, ever, ever leave you or abandon you. So keep listening to that. And I found ultimately that radio was something I really loved because it was intimate. It was something that spoke directly to you. It was you and the song, or you and that host. And there's something that you just couldn't replicate that at all. That station eventually went away. I was really bummed about it, and I went searching for another station like it. It didn't exist, but then I found KTUH, which is right up the street. They're owned by UH Manoa. They're our one and only college radio station on this island, and I fell in love with them. I had a little radio that I found at a Punahou Carnival White Elephant. It was the only station that could capture the very low frequency that they had, and it was up in the corner of my bedroom, and if I sat in the corner and kind of contorted my body and had the signal kind of go through me, I could catch it. And I would listen like this for hours. And I just fell in love with the host and the DJ. So mom, dad, if you wondered what I was doing in my room for hours, I was listening to the radio. And I just fell in love with the hosts, and I wanted to be them. They were gods, these people like from the heavens picking out this great music. And many, many, many years later, I'm at UH, and I just on a whim signed up for the station, and they accepted me. And I showed up there, and I thought I had stepped into heaven. And then more importantly, I met a lot of these hosts that I had been listening to for years. And they weren't dicks. They were really, really nice people. And that was one of the main things I learned. Like, when you meet your heroes, isn't it wonderful when they're really, really nice people? And on top of that, they take you in with open arms, and they're like, oh, you like that kind of music? So do I. Here's this CD, and it's totally legal, but let me just bootleg it for you. And then this one, and we'll pirate stuff together. And, and it's this wonderful, welcoming community. And you also learn a lot of other things like your basic broadcasting, like, the number one rule you always learn is don't panic. Don't panic is death. Second thing you always learn is never, ever say fuck or shit on air. And then ultimately that radio should be fun. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing. Let's not do it if it's not fun. And ultimately that you're rewarded for trying something new. If you challenge the audience, if you play them something they've never heard before, you actually do better. And if you're like, check out this band of you've never heard of before, but they're really good, and the audience loves you for it. And there's a celebration of chaos and discovery there that I really, really fell in love with. And I stayed there as long as I could, ended up being the GM of that station, and eventually you have to leave. They kick you out of there. And I got recruited. I came from this wonderful family of warm, loving, godlike college radio DJs, and I got hired to where I am now, which is Hawaii Public Radio, which is incredible, an incredible institution, but I was there first, and since we're talking about generations, Gen X millennial person there. And when I showed up for work there, I hoped to meet the gods and, talk music and talk records with all of these people. And it didn't happen. And not only did it not happen, it was like, who the hell is this child here? And they were like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm going to do a eclectic kind of music. And they were like, no, you don't do that. There are rules to public radio. We don't do this. We don't do that. We don't do that. And then on top of that, your voice is shit. You should not be on radio. You should not be on radio. Your voice. You really should sound like Barry White on Quaaludes. You should be like, like ladies, and I just can't do it. This is what I have. And, I stuck it out, and and my show when it started was very, per what they wanted, very regimented. It was like, on this time you play this, at this time you play this, at this time you play this. And it was fine, and I went along with it for a while because I was so excited to be finally getting paid to DJ. And I was like, oh, you're gonna pay me for this? Great. But at the same time, it came with this awful cost of relinquishing the freedom of selection. And I was like, I'm gonna go along with this for a while, and then I got sick of it, and I decided essentially to quit. And I was gonna quit by committing radio suicide. I was gonna go out with this Hail Mary, and one day I went on air, and I was like, guys, I'm gonna play what I want tonight. And you're not gonna hear me tomorrow, next week, and it was fun, and thank you for listening, and please continue to support this station, yada, 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 yada. But it was fun, peace out. And I did a whole show of whatever the hell I wanted to play that night. I mixed Mozart into Bob Marley, into Metallica, knowing full well I was gonna get the call next morning and I was gonna get fired, and it was nice, but it was a nice run. I was gonna hang up my hat as far as being a broadcaster forever. It didn't happen. Not only did it not happen, the station apparently got flooded with a lot of emails and calls being like, what the hell was that? that was totally different. We love that. It's not just this or that or that. It's everything, and it's chaos. We want more of that. And so I wasn't fired, and the show continued to build and build and build and build into what it is now. Unfortunately, now it's super late at night. Nobody's up late enough to hear it, and I'm hardly on air anymore myself. But it's that kind of fundamentals that I really loved doing. And thank you. So just, a couple life lessons, if you're somebody's hero, remember to not be a dick. Think for yourself, find your own path, take chances, especially, with music selection. Don't say shit or fuck on air. Don't panic. And ultimately, learn the rules, play by them enough so that you can break them. I would love to chop up the old rule book that I was originally, chop it up into tiny little pieces, turn it, burn it, and cook those people dinner over with it, but they're no longer around. Anyway, broadcast media is changing. It's still intimate. It's still a lot of times, it's podcasts now, it's Spotify, but that intimacy is still there, and we're still able to deliver all of this love and all of this discovery from that same dark booth, all alone, with padded walls. Yeah, so thank you.